Even well-planned projects can encounter issues such as utility delays, last-minute requirements, equipment failures at startup, or even property damage. In this video, we'll walk you through the most common problems that come up during a solar installation so you're not caught off guard. So Austin, from the very beginning, what could go wrong in terms of permitting or interconnection applications?
Yes, with interconnection applications, some of the delays that we might run into are extended review times by the utility company if they've had an influx of interconnection applications. Depending on the system size, it might bump it up to a level 2 or a level 3 review, which adds additional review time from the utility, whether it's with a third-party designer or in-house, and that can result in 6 months of additional review time. As far as permitting goes, delays that we commonly run into are code interpretation every now and then with the review party that might involve setbacks, what code cycle they've adopted and they are implementing.
Does that sometimes change from the time that the customer signs the contract and we design the system, and then all of a sudden you have an HJ adopting a new code and those setbacks no longer apply?
Not too often, but we have run into where they adopted a more recent code cycle, and until we got to the permitting phase, they were implementing a more up-to-date code version that impacted the size of the system because of setback requirements.
And then we have to go back and redesign.
And then it forces us to go back and redesign, revisit with the customer, and make decisions based off of the updated proposal and system size.
We go out and we do a site visit, we do an analysis, we develop a proposal, and we make these assumptions on what equipment is required. Then we submit it to the utility company, and sometimes there are surprises that we weren't expecting.
Yes. Unfortunately, the utility company, with the circuits that we're connecting to, that's an area that we have no idea if it's sized accordingly. And so sometimes with an interconnection application, the utility will come back to us with a list of required upgrades, which could be substation, could be the transmission lines, or an additional piece of equipment, an IPR, or a Viper recloser, or a SCADA device.
So Austin, when you're talking about IPR, telemetry, SCADA, Viper, what are these requirements for?
They allow the utility to monitor the system, its production, its output, and it also gives them the option to shut off the system and avoid creating a closed loop and ensure safety of their linemen on a crew. If the transmission lines would go down for vehicle accident, they're able to ensure that the solar at our site has shut down. So it's a redundancy on monitoring and safety.
So, and essentially it gives the utility company control of the solar array remotely in case they need it in those emergency situations.
Correct.
So now that we've completed the application, interconnection application and the permitting process, now we're on site, we're starting construction. What are some of the possible things that could go wrong during construction?
I'll start with roof damage or gutter damage. We're putting a ladder up, we're booming equipment up to the roof. We could damage the gutter, maybe put a hole in the roof. We are notifying the customer immediately of what happened, and then contacting either the customer's roofer or a roofer that we have partnered with in the past to come in, make repairs in a timely fashion for the customer so that, for peace of mind, doesn't look like we were there at all. Another common byproduct of doing solar on your roof might be we have to bring in equipment.
Sure.
And equipment in the yard, through the yard, does leave ruts.
Right.
We will bring in a landscaper at the end of the project to repair those ruts, reseed the grass to get it back to the level of quality that it was before we were on site.
With any construction, there's going to be, particularly when you're using heavy equipment, there'll be damage to the lawn, and potentially if you're trenching, it's going to take time for that to settle. And so those are just common situations that happen with construction on grass. But it's our goal to make sure that the customer's property looks as good or better when we leave, or at least in terms of if we've seeded or grassed it in time, it will be back to the way it was. So now let's talk about what's underground. Sometimes, most of the time, we don't know exactly what's going on underneath the ground.
Correct, and sometimes the customer forgets what's underground as well. Common items to run into might be a forgotten electric line, water line, anything that we damage, we will repair, and we also will do our best to proactively trace any customer-owned lines. When you call 811, they mark the utility,
Right.
Public utilities, and they don't mark customer-owned utilities that might be running from building to building on the property. So we'll come in, trace those out if we're aware that they're going across our trench, but sometimes there's a forgotten one, and if we do hit something, we will repair that while on site.
When it comes to what's underground, other than the customer-owned utilities or even the utility underground, sometimes there's rock or obstacles that get in our way of either trenching or putting in posts for ground mounts. How do you overcome those obstacles when you find surprises?
Rock is our most common unknown, unseen adversary, and a lot of times it does require us to go back to engineering to maybe respec or pick a different racking. Instead of trying to pound post through the rock, we'll do a helical ground screw potentially. Okay. Or if it's in our trench, we might have to upsize our equipment, to get through, and then bring in dirt to fill that back in, the void left by the rock.
So once you complete the installation and you're ready to turn the system on for the first time and you flip that switch and it doesn't turn on as expected, what do you suspect is going on, or what do you see that are common problems?
A common problem is a dead out of the box inverter. Maybe it's an optimizer that manufactured at the facility. There was an error on their end. We're able to RMA that immediately, get a replacement, keep the project moving along towards permission to operate. Another common problem that we see is logistics. Damage occurs maybe to a solar panel, the glass gets broken, or the frame gets bent.
Yep.
An inverter or an optimizer may get crushed during shipping. We're able to replace that either with an RMA from the factory, or a lot of times we do have spares here at the shop that we're able to just take right out and in a timely fashion get that replaced, get the system back up and running in a timely fashion.
Then do you ever have, Austin, issues that are not related to the work that you did, but the solar's still not turning on?
Yes, we have ran into instances where the power that was coming from the utility was dirty power, and which would be an irregular voltage, frequencies that when the solar was turned on, it forced the inverters out of their spec, and so they would turn off. We need to then involve the utility. They'll come out, put a power quality analyzer on, run that for 30 days, and then potentially make adjustments to their grid, a transformer at that point to hopefully accommodate our solar.
So that could delay the project several weeks as well. So basically the inverter's looking for electricity coming in within certain parameters, and if it's not, it's shutting off that inverter.
Correct. There's specs on the high side and the low side, and if it is forced outside of those as a safety feature, the inverters will automatically shut off.
Hopefully your installation goes smoothly without any issues. But the reality is, with every construction project, issues do come up. We could have issues that could delay your project that start in the permitting and application process. We could have them during construction, such as damaging your gutters, downspouts, possibly your roof. And then also potentially problems underground that we're unaware of that could present problems. And of course, don't forget the utility. We're relying and assuming that the utility company is going to be providing us with clean energy coming into your grid. So there's a variety of different issues that could show up during the installation process. But as I mentioned earlier, our goal is to get your system up and running and to leave your property in as good of condition as we found it when we're done. Before you go, make sure to subscribe for more honest solar insights and drop your questions in the comments. Thanks for watching.